Sponsor an orphan and you'll help support a vulnerable child to have the education they've always dreamed of, so they can build a brighter future. You'll be feeding a hungry stomach and a hungry mind with knowledge that will last them a lifetime. That's the power of an education. Sponsor an orphan now with Islamic Relief.
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, everybody. This is your boy, Preacher Moss, host of the SOS ShOUT show. I am live on location in Michigan, in the Lucina car. Sometimes it rolls like that. Wasn't able to make it to my computer, but you know, you got to get in when you fit in, right? So listen, today's subject, we're going to be talking about bullies in the Ummah. I want to make sure that everybody is kind of aware we're going to be talking about today. This is kind of an issue that's been out there. I've been dealing with it for quite a number of years since I became Muslim. And I think, you know, the tonality that I want to bring is we do have an opportunity to empower ourselves and speak on these things. I think oftentimes between religiosity and scholars, some of them are great scholars, awesome people, but some of them not. Some of them are not great scholars. Some of them are bums. So we're going to call it what it is. And sometimes you just have to be able to speak openly and honestly and just have courage about what's going on in the space. So I'm going to be talking about that today. And I'm also going to make the point that it's not necessarily just scholars. We do have people that position themselves and I want to say leverage opportunities of power. And it does affect how our matches run. It affects how our relations run in between communities. As a comedian, I cannot tell you how many times I've walked into a lot of situations, beautiful matches that are run by people who don't have the best intentions. And sometimes those people usurp the people that do have great intentions. So that's what I wanted to break out to begin as a bit of a disclaimer. The other scope of it is, you know, again, talking about how do we frame, if you will, a pedagogy where we're able to talk about these situations and have safe spaces. Oftentimes, we do not advocate for the safe space, which is, I believe, really a basic tenet of Islam, that you do have a safe space, you do have a sacred space to be able to talk about these things and sometimes have difficult conversations. But as we, and I have to say also, as we look at the times that we're in, and when I say look at times, we're looking at a society is not so much as empathetic as we would want it to be, as caring as we would want it to be. And that's something we have to address too. What's the quotient of care in our community? And I can say this, I'm 55 years old. It has changed. You know, there is a quotient on being right, but it's not a quotient on being civil. It's a quotient on being winning, but it's not a quotient on equity. So I think today we're going to talk about some of those things. And, you know, you guys know me. I'm about what? I'm not the tallest guy in the world. So I mean, when I grew up, I was a target of a bully, a couple of bullies. But you know what? The best thing about a bully that stands tall is a bully that lays down on his back. So we're going to go ahead and talk about that for the most part. This is not a violent show. But, you know, like we say, if you stay ready, you ain't got to get ready. So that's what we're talking about here on the ShOUT show. I appreciate you guys dealing with the location shoot, and shout out to the Lucina Siddiqui family being really, really quiet in the car right now. Like, you know, like we got a government tapping here. But everybody's a team player. So we're going to talk about that as well here on the ShOUT show. We'll be right back. Hit it, Satana, here on the ShOUT show, talking about bullies in the Ummah. Peace up. right, Satan, I think I lost my sound. Can you hear me? By chance, inshallah. Okay, well, if you can't hear me, then I'm gonna rock on. So this topic actually starts several years ago. Several years ago, I was at a masjid outside of Columbia, South Carolina. And what I saw was a bit disparaging as I saw someone speaking to young kids in a manner that really, really wasn't conducive to A, their spiritual growth, and B, just the fact that they were kids. And what was thrown out there to really disparage the kids was the fact that somehow what they said or what they did was thoroughly going to make Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala unhappy. And it really got away from the fact that, yo, man, we have opportunities and space to make mistakes, and I think we need to do that. So, and it sparked something in me as well. What it sparked was the fact that a lot of times people take an opportunity to look at somebody's mistakes and not to really help them correct the mistakes, but to somehow make an imprint that somehow they're not worthy, or somehow they're not the best that they could be, or somehow they're not worthy of forgiveness or investment and things like that. So when we get into that space, there is something that has to be said about that. I spent over 11 years teaching in the public school system, and the public school system has a set of bullies we don't really talk about. We're not talking about people on the playground. We're talking about bullies who are teachers in teacher positions that crush, in some regards, the grand spirit of these kids. And because of that, we have kids who are broken. We have kids who are not confident. We have kids who are broken, kids who are not confident. And, it's unshame because they deserve to have an opportunity just like everybody else. So, let me see here. So before I get into that, let me go ahead and introduce my family in the Shout Out Show family. First, we got Sister Ree. I want to make sure if you can hear me because I couldn't hear the intro. So we got Sister Ree. Cool. Thank you. Looks like we're on par. Shout out to Sister Ree. Thank you so much, Sister Ree, for taking care of that situation for me. I appreciate it. I'll holler at you a little bit later on some other stuff. Next up, and peace and blessings to your family. Brother Derek out there doing the thing, doing the work, and glad to see you guys making that happen, man. Good to see you guys winning. Next up, we got my brother, Johnny L. Thomas, better known as JT. Thank you so much. Out here with your niece, man, just kicking it. I hope you and the family are doing well. I owe you a call just to check on you, man. No cost of business. Just make sure your brother's doing all right. Much love. Next up, Brother Altaf Rashid, better known as Mr. 6 o'clock, straight up, straight down. My dear brother, how you doing, man? Always a pleasure to see you on the show. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Give me the full greeting, man. I need it, boy. I need that full greeting, man. He is a Canadian envoy to the show. And, I just appreciate folks, man. I can't really tell you, what was the inspiration. Sometimes you wake up in the morning, you just appreciate people, man. People, not just people, but people in their intentions. And I just love that about the people on the show, the people in this particular platform. Thank you guys so much. I don't speak on it much, but it's very inspiring. Next up, my brother, Bilal Salahuddin, and his queen, Sister Sonia. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Sir, how you doing? It's always a pleasure to see you, man. And thank you so much. Got some work for you when I come back, man. Got some outlets I need to get switched out. I want to have them with the little USB in them because I'm trying to be fly. But until I see you, man, please keep me in your du'as, man. I keep all of you guys in your du'as. Thank you so much. Brother Eric Carter, wa alaikum assalam rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Good brother, black man. Good to see you in the spot, man. Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate your support as always, man. It is important and inspiring. Next up, we got brother Adam Khan. Wa alaikum assalam rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My other crime partner in Canada. We promoted him to be the Canadian ambassador to the show after we promoted, of course, we promoted Brother Altaf to be the special envoy. Man, thank you so much, man. Peace and blessings to your family. And from Melbourne, we got Sister Aika. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Peace and blessings to you and your family. Thank you so much for joining us. Haven't seen you in a minute. Okay. And of course, making this thing work, as always, Sister Satana Whitfield, the consulting producer on this show. We've had a You know what? This is really, we've had a really good, interesting couple months and kind of expanding, spreading our wings. So, wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, sister. I thank you for going along with this on this journey. Much love. Okay. So, let me get to the topic at hand bullying. I've never said it openly, like in an open forum, but the first time I really, really ever felt bullying was a convention I went to years ago. It was the WD Muhammad community, and it was at a time that, and let's just put it out here. I've always felt some factions, not all, but some factions of my immigrant brother and sister community bullied African Americans. And they bullied them in a spiritual way, knowing that coming out of the first and the second, the mass conversion of Muslims, talking over 200,000 people going from NOI to Sunni, needing that support, needing that guidance, and looking in a very, very loving and sometimes naive way, you got bullied. People moved us from a spiritual base, a spiritual journey, to whereby it could only be spiritual if people approved. Now, I myself have been the target of spiritual bullying plenty of times, possibly because I was a comedian, possibly at times because I had, quote unquote, some visibility in the community, whatever it is. But the idea of using religion to leverage power has something that's always sat pretty nasty with me. I don't agree with that. I don't like it. And it permeates our community. I know it happens in other communities, but I'm talking about us in general. It permeates our community because you have people who claim God, but they're not godlike. They're not godlike. Let me say it again. They claim God, but they're not godlike. I'm not talking about being perfect. I'm talking about just remembering the basic aspects of a religion, of a relationship with the Creator, and it's supposed to carry over. I'm not saying be perfect servants. We're not that. But there is something of a gravitas that happens when you're on that path. When you make a mistake, it does bother you, right? When we say things out of our mouth, it does bother us. And one of the characteristics of these bullies, and some of them are religious scholars, some of them are people who are on the board of these masjids. Some of the bullies are the people who write the checks that keep the masjid going. One of the characteristics is that they don't understand pushback. That if you push me a certain way, I'm going to push back. Dare I say rebel. And I see it more and more and more in our politics, in our economics, in our spiritual realm, in our places of worship, in our government, that this is the thing that's become more and more prevalent as we move on. I am, because of my size, when I was a little kid, people used to bully me all the time. And I wore glasses, which made it worse. But the willingness, if you will, to fight back. If a bully hits you, if you hit them back twice, they're going to think about hitting you again. And what I mean by that is, do we have the resolve as a community? Do we have a resolve in some regards to not only stand up to the bully, but frame bully behavior before it even gets to that point? That if we know this is endemic in our community, can we even go out and say beforehand,
Go to the bully beforehand. Say, this could be a problem based on your behavior. I want to address it now. Not while you have power. Not while you have a platform. Not while you have attention. Not while you have money. Not while you have prestige. I'm framing this thing because I see there's going to be a problem in the future. And being able to address it as something that's going to happen in the future is something we need to do. Because it has so much impact later down the line. I'm in the entertainment business. People go, why did so and so do that? I can't believe so and so did that. You know, the entertainment business is a cesspool for bully behavior. Only that the bully behavior is inspired by incentives. It's incentivized. And I want to say that even in our masses, even our Ummah, you have to be foolish to think that it's not incentivized. That is not incentivized behavior. That this behavior is meant to get me someplace. And half the time, if you're not willing to stand up and say, wait a minute, this is not correct. Wait a minute, this is not just. And you have to be willing sometimes to understand that bullies roll in a pack. Because a bully is never a good bully unless they have what? An audience. Oftentimes in my life, I've stood by and watched people get bullied. Just in some regards to find out the pattern. When I say find out the pattern, I want to know how these people feel comfortable oppressing other folks, intimidating other folks. I'm a creative, so my response is usually a creative response, whereby the bully, who are 9.5 times very manipulative, but not necessarily creative, very manipulative, but not necessarily creative, that we have a response to these folks. You know, I deal with a good friend, Brother Danish Castle. He does a program called in Sheik's Clothing, in Sheikh's Clothing, which really talks about spiritual bullying in a very nuanced way. But I was sitting around one day listening to a group of converts, and the conversation they were having was that of almost a person who'd been physically abused, mentally abused. You know, there's a saying among converts, and really in the conversation, it says you haven't had your heart broken as a Muslim until a Muslim breaks it. And I'm sure that's the way it is with individual communities, other religious groups. But that you've made yourself vulnerable in a space where you're just trying to get information to get closer to your Lord. That type of behavior is despicable. In the penchant whereby people inject themselves in your own spiritual growth and development, you have to be careful who you put in those spaces. You have to be 100% leery of who you're putting in those spaces, who you are taking your information from. You know, I always like the idea of hadith, hadith of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, in that things that he said was always cross-referenced. That there were 2 or 3 witnesses that said what was said. You know, the interesting thing with the bullies are the exact opposite. They don't want witnesses. They want to be able to, in some regards, spiritually gaslight you to be able to say that I didn't say that, but I told you what to do. That the action and the speech are not necessarily in the same plane. And the language that goes out now. You know, we watch Donald Trump bully the United States out of his own constitution. Hear me now. Bully the United States out of his own constitution. But who did he take it to? He took it to people who have derived power and privilege and position from bully relationships. That the political arena, it was already set up for a bully. It just came that this was the right one at the right time. And he found a platform to be able to have people who would clap for him when he went up against people and disrespected them, and he bullied them. Because this is the nature. You know, life is not blood sport. Politics and religion is not blood sport. But someone made it blood sport. And all of a sudden, The wariness and the acceptance of a bully is what we deal with now. There are a lot of relationships that have been spoiled and altered and ruined because we didn't step up. I'm going to talk a little bit more about this when we come back after the break, because I think I need to address it. So let's take a break. We're going to come back talking about bullies in the Ummah. This is Preacher Moss. Hey, babies. Welcome to Radio WCUC, Convenient Urgent Care, home of the smart patient. This is DJ What It Do. You know what time it is. It's the top of the hour, and the request lines are open. You know what you want to hear. I know what you want to hear. Operators are waiting.
I just gotta hear "Don't Get the COVID."
Don't get the COVID. Put your mask back on. The Delta COVID, more contagious than before. Don't get the COVID. Go on and get the vaccine. You know that it can keep you safe, and your people living up in your space. Don't get the COVID. You need to wash your hands. The Delta COVID is more deadly than before. Don't get the COVID. Go on and get your vaccine. You know that it can keep you from dying. Don't leave your family all alone and crying. Don't get the COVID.
We invite you to join our fight against COVID and against misinformation. It's time to listen to the doctors and trust the science.
When I think of people dying that don't have to die, it makes me sad. Now is the time to be sober. Together we can make this thing over. Let's fight the COVID. Convenient urgent care, home of the smart patient.
All right, everybody, we're back. It's your boy Preacher Moss. Listen, I began to allude to the fact that, we have to have a certain type of resolve, if you will, to stop the bullies. And the reason why I say that is because bully or the conceptualization of bullying throughout the years, it's generational. We deal with it in a generational reality. We've watched bullies in front of us. The George Floyd, the Ahmaud Arbery's, the Breonna Taylors. We've watched bullies in not just in physical action, but we've watched bullies in political action, in lawmaking. And the fear that I have, and I could be totally wrong, but the fear that I have is that people get comfortable in a generational sense, because the scope of the bully is not to promote the bully as these aggressive actions, but to promote the culture and the environment that allows these aggressive actions to be, quote unquote, acceptable and permissible. It's antithetical of religious equity. It is the exact opposite of applicable justice, because now, and this is really, really important, now we put people in positions that they can write history. There's a thing that says, the winners write history. But in this place, we have losers who are allowed to be able to write history because folks don't stand up to them at the proper space, the proper time. And I'm not talking about let's be courageous or things like that. I'm saying let's have a normalcy about the things that are incorrect and calling them out in their proper space and time. I recently confronted a bully, and it was typical. It was a typical thing. They did not like what I said. But what makes it worse is I didn't just send it an email or a text. I showed up and said, yes, I said that. And the bully said, you want to talk to me? Come on out here. Because it ain't going to be physical. Most bullies can't fight. But I had to stand on what I believed. And that is the thing that we have to get back to. That you have a culture of people, African Americans, Native Americans, whose entire existence is built upon the ability of the oppressor to oppress them in a way that is socially acceptable. Let me say that again. Socially acceptable. So for those who come behind those actions, it's okay. See, for when you had slavery back in the day, it was okay into the 19s and 20s for people to continue to propagate Jim Crow and oppression and racism because they said this is where it came from. While the modality had changed in terms of slavery, that you couldn't own people, you can own the rights of people through laws. You can own the rights of people through statutes. You can own the rights of people through economics, where they live, their education. You know, bullying happens in so many different forms that sometimes it's just mind-boggling. It's mind-boggling. You know, I've read stories of people who went out of their way to make sure that other people couldn't grow and evolve. The stunted growth of women in the United States as well as around the world. We socially accept that type of bullying, but we don't talk about it. Because over and over and over and over, it's been paced at a particular about this. All right, my phone's back. But I just got, I just want you guys to think about it because we're getting ready to go into, and this is why I also thought this up. We're getting ready to go into the midterm elections. And what that means is we're going to have another set of constituencies set up in terms of lawmakers. You can look and see with your own eyes and your own intellect that I couldn't trust this election if you asked me to. Because I'm looking at people literally trying to steal the election. And the only thing that's even more mind-boggling is it's acceptable that people are trying to make sure other people don't get to the polls. I'm not talking about just swaying your opinion. I'm trying to make sure you don't get to the polls, that you don't express your constitutional right. And we're sitting here now in 2022, and it feels like maybe 1952. And maybe we need to go back and just rediscover the courage of the Kings and the Reverend Vernon Johns and the Malcolm X's and the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's and the Muhammad Ali's. Maybe we need to go back and rediscover that type of courage because these are people who stood up to bullies. This is the winning narrative that we don't talk about anymore. Remember Mufti Muhammad who stood up to bullies. There's a reason why you have a WD Muhammad community because they stood up to the Saudis back in the day. And they said, what you're teaching us in terms of religiosity is not what the people need. Keep your money and we'll keep our integrity. Over and over and over. And I find this that the stories are buried. The winning narratives of people who step up to the bullies are somehow pushed aside, or you really, really got to dig deep to find out where they are. We are the winning example right now. The fact that we can sit here and do this platform without being taken off the air, without being censored, this is the winning narrative. And I think we need to get back to dealing with bullies, but dealing with them with winning narratives. Because I tell you this, bullies don't go around to places where people win a lot or people win often. They look for people to be broken down on self-esteem and spirituality, and they look for folks who are mostly traumatized or hurt, or however you want to say it, and they breed there. They plant their seeds there. Today, I'm saying no to the bullies. Tomorrow, I'm going to say no to the bullies. I ask that you guys join me. All right. That's my show and the shout out show. You guys have been amazing. God bless and take care of yourself. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Take care.